Alrighty, I'm going to do a quick walk around on my 2006 Hummer H3. I guess I'll start off with where it began. 2006, luxury package, non-adventure, so it did not have the 4-to-1 transfer case that came from the factory, and it did not have the rear locker from the factory. 3.5 liter 5-cylinder. It had the 4L60. There was a manual 5-speed option, but this one had the 4L60. Had an AAM 7.6 IFS front diff. That is hot garbage, and a 10-bolt rear. My dad actually bought it brand new in July of 2005. He drove it for years, and then eventually it became mine. I went off-roading once, and then the rest is history. So today, it's got a 6.2 liter LS, had the 3.5, then the 5.3. I swapped in a 5.3 and got it carb legal in the state of California. Left California, but blew up the 5.3, put in a 6.2. I had the 4L60 all the way up until last year, so had the 4L60 for almost 20 years, which is crazy to think. And then I just put in a 6L80. Solid axle swapped it, went through many variations or iterations of the solid axle swap with Dana 44, low pinion, then high pinion, 10 bolt for the stock 10 bolt for years, etc. I mean, I can go into so many details, but I guess I'll just try and hit the highlights. So yeah, so anyway, 6.2, 6L80. It's got an NP205 doubler, so 196 to 1, 272 to 1, 533 to 1. In first gear, the crawl ratio is 110 to 1, which is pretty excessive. I normally keep it in about second. Axle in the front is a home-built Dana 70. Dana 70 front, I got it out of an 05 van rear. Cut it down, put Dana 60 outers on it. It's got an ARB, had an Eaton E-locker, blew that up, had stock shafts, blew those up. So I blew the stock shafts before I even put the, I blew the Eaton before I even broke a stock shaft, which is kind of pathetic. So ARB front, Yukon chromoly axle shafts, Yukon super joints, Yukon hardcore locking hubs. Those I put in almost immediately because the G2 locking hubs lasted one trip. Now those have been in for 7 years. The hardcore locking hubs, they've been great. I am running H3 calipers because they work really well. And then I machine the hubs down so the rotor is slip-on top. So you can basically pull this thing apart like a unit bearing. You can pull the spindle off with the hub still attached. Makes it way more serviceable in the field. Running a Nissan Xterra steering box and hydro assist. Bent like a bunch of tie rods, so now I'm running a material called stress proof. So yeah, Nissan steering box, power, or ram assist. Running 14-inch 2.5 Fox coilovers, air bumps. Got about 5 inches of up travel. I've been toying around with a front sway bar. Oh, excuse the metal that's there. I just slapped on these 42 13520 with some KMC bead locks. I literally put them on today. I was running 43-inch Mickey's Baja Pro XS and Battleborn 17-inch bead lock. You can say these are pretty beat up. So I'm going to keep both sets. These are the gnarly set, and then this is a streetable 42, I'd say. So the rear axle is an HO72. It's the precursor to the 14 bolt. Just think 14 bolt with the dropout third. No one knows what they are, so I got it for free with factory 513s and a Detroit locker 17 spline. Eventually I put in a 14 bolt locker because parts interchange, and 14 bolt shafts. I've done so much stuff to this stuff. Maybe I'm just best off to kind of touch the highlights, and if anyone wants me to go into depth on more, I can. I was running leaf springs, same thing. I was running leaf springs, factory H3 leaf springs that came on this vehicle in 2005 until last year. So 18 years. They were spring under stock. I put them spring over, put an anti-wrap bar on them. They still hit, or they were still wrapping even with an anti-wrap bar. I think those 43s deep gearing just caused havoc on them. So I linked it. I had some requirements. I said I want to keep the interior clean, so I didn't want to go through. So they hang down a little low. You'd be shocked at how little I've hit them, but I think I'm going to hit them more now at the 42s. So everything's changeable. If I hate it, well, I'll cut it off and redo it. So yeah, so I'll do a little interior shot. Here's the interior. Factory leather seats, factory heated leather seats. The heaters still work. Still kept the factory H3 shifter. As you can see, I put 2 buttons here. This is for tap shift. I made my own tap shift wiring harness. This is the high-low for the 205, or for the doubler. This is the high-low for the 205. Rugged radio setup. I got the headphones because I have half doors. Got some, buttons for lights and all that. This tells me what gear I'm in. So I programmed the 6L80 through HP tuners to basically start in 3rd gear. So up 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. So I can start at, it's almost like a manual valve body, but electronically done. I've heard doublers run hot, so I put a temp gauge on my doubler. Mine never has an issue. It seems to be another brand that has all the issues. But yeah, so this is the interior. It's basically stock. When you turn on the Hummer, it still to this day, I mean, I spend a lot of time, you turn it on, it thinks it's got a 5-cylinder, a factory 4-speed, factory axles. I have tone rings I machined put on the hubs. I did the full wiring harness. Everything looks factory. ABS works. Here's a quick little addition I did. I added lap belts. Oh, they're all twisted up, just so when you're rock crawling, sometimes these seat belts lock up. The factory belts or seat belts do. So when you're rock crawling, you can run lap belts or you can run your seat belt. So I did that on both sides. I recently rhino lined these, or raptor lined them. Honestly, these things were so hammered. You can see I plastic welded them back together and basically tried to give them a little bit more life, but they've been cracked, beat on, dented. They're pretty hammered, so did that. We'll see what I do long term. I went to the junkyard and grabbed another set of fenders. You can see the back. I've got some stuff in it right now, but same thing. Looks real factory, and it is factory, all factory stuff. So AC still works, cruise control works, heater works, all of it still works. Okay, this is what I call my rock crawler overlander lightweight setup. So I'm not an overlander, but I drive it all over the place. I carry a lot of tools, so it's super thin stuff, no slide outs or anything, but got tools, got spare parts, more tools, all bunch of stuff, a bunch of recovery gear, DIY power tank, and then I got a big cooler that slides in the back here. So this is kind of my home built setup. I already did one of my first changes. I had big monstrous lower link brackets that hung down real low, like to here. So I cut them out and I now have them tucked up nice and tight. I got hung up on them too many times and said, all right, I'm done. So that's what I got now. So way more ground clearance. Anti-squat is still under 100, so it doesn't lift. It doesn't do anything weird. I really like the numbers on this thing. Also, you could see here, I basically did a chop. I cut the body. I cut a few inches out of the body and then sectioned the sliders up 3-4 inches. I got to go back and look, but a few inches. It made a huge difference. So way more slippery and way more ground clearance. I've got a hybrid cage. So it's external, but it's also internal. I use this thing as a slider, really. If it wasn't for the Honestly, this thing would have no windows. The whole thing would be caved in the back. So it's almost like another rock slider. I just painted it, but you could see it's been beat, and up there too. And then the cage also ties in. You can see it ties in internally. It doesn't leak or anything. And then it ties into the floor, and then it goes to the frame rails. So I do want to eventually add a tie in here and go in here. So I have an internal B for more strength. But yeah, that's what I have right now. So you can see my Fox coilovers. I've got a tower that goes across, and the resis mount off of there. And then I've got a Premier power welder, which I love this thing. So I'm big into recovery. So if you've probably seen this thing at KOH, King of the Hammers, I've done recovery many years. So that's what I'm all about. So I kind of will go into a little bit more detail on that. So here you can see my ripped ABS wire. So that's why the light's on. Here's the 3-link. You can see the coilovers hang down a little low. Honestly, they transition nicely. And with the 43s that I had on, the tires are so wide, the tires were right next to the coilover mount. So I never really hung up on them. If I did, I'd smack them and I'd keep moving. We'll see what happens here now with the narrower tires. And like I said, if I hit them enough, I'll get angry enough, and then I'll say, you know what, I'm going through the floor. Put a Schroeder sway bar on it, bought some 1-inch arms, 1-inch thick arms, and then made them double shear. And yeah, you can see the ABS wire right there, or the connector, and then made some links for that. But yeah, it's a 3-link, lots of separation, 12 inches of separation, so I never break the links, because you know, this thing's heavy. So wanted to make sure I have lots of separation. Here's a quick shot of the lower links. You can see the lower links transition very nicely to the lower shock mounts. You can also see the big bracket right there for the track bar. Maybe one day I'll move it above the 3rd link for more clearance and a flat, or not clearance, but a flatter bar. But yeah, still runs factory tank and all the evap stuff. So you know, it's always evolving. I've literally gone through 20 iterations of this thing, so if it sucks, I change it. So for now, the coilovers are where they're at, and if I ever hate it, maybe I'll put them inside, but in the cab. But for now, this is the setup, the rear 3-link I did last year with a friend. It's got a Thor Parts bumper, base bumper. I don't even think he sells them as a base, but I know CJ, and he said, hey, I got an extra bumper. There's no attachments to it. It's just the bare base bottom piece of it. I said, yeah, I'll take it. So then me and a friend, we built out the brush guard, and then we added the big lights to fill 2 holes in there, got some rigids, and then a Badlands Apex winch. I've had so many different winches, Smitty built, Apex, the Badlands, worn. Seems like I break them every few years and then just slap another one in. So this one's going on 3.5 years, so I'm sure I'll probably replace it in the next year or so. You can see in here, I've got half doors. I went to the junkyard, picked up a set of doors, cut them down. So if I'm doing gnarly rock crawling, I'll run my half doors instead of full doors. More visibility, less weight. With full doors on, the 43s, and some equipment, not all of it, it was 6,800 pounds. It's probably closer to 6,600 pounds. These tires are so heavy. Just the tire alone was a little bit heavier than my 40-inch tire with a bead lock, and that's just tire alone. So I'm sure I lost a good amount of weight, but I've weighed it 6,800 pounds with the 43s, full doors. So, you know, put it on half doors, that loses some weight. Depending on what I'm carrying, I could shave some weight. So yeah, I got half doors up there, and I've also got them down there for the rear doors. So that definitely saves some weight. Honestly, I could go on and on, so I'll probably just stop here and let people ask questions. If you guys have questions, I'll go into detail. I have so much detail just wrapped up into this thing. I've got a suck down winch that's on like redo version 7. I know I'm going to get it working great at some point. I think suck down winches are awesome. You know, like this, like just these things, like this was an adventure in and of itself. The turn signals, the tires would rub and rip them out. So I had to make custom mounts, but all the brackets or all the lights have a deep bulb. So I kept hitting them. So then I found some random ones in Japan and had to buy them from Japan and have them shipped here off of a Japan website because they don't even sell them in the US. So I found some Japanese website and then made custom mounts. So like just that alone, I could talk 20 minutes about. I cut up the radiator, or cut up the core support for a bigger radiator, the cutting up the body for the higher sliders. I mean, I could talk hours about anything. So I guess I'll just leave it there and say, if you have any questions, I'll go into detail on really anything you want. But this is where it sits today, and the whole point of it is it's not the best at anything, but I hope it does everything a little bit. So it's done a lot of broken recovery rigs, dead Ultra 4 cars. They're not heavy, hauling them up hammer trails, dead weight, non-running vehicles. I'll haul them in this. This thing's heavy, so it moves a lot of stuff. Drives on the highway at 80. Goes rock crawling, it's got horsepower. So it's not the best at anything, but I try and make it do everything. And this thing's been around the block, and I'll never sell it. And if I ever build a buggy, maybe one day I will, but I'll never get rid of this. This has been in the family since day one, and it'll never leave the family. So and it's been through a lot of adventures, driving thousands of miles on highway, ultimate adventure, KOH recovery rig for numerous years, Rubicon trips, Ford Ice trips, rock crawling trips, Sand Hollow trips, Moab trips, and just the stories it could tell. We've rebuilt third members, welding bumpers back together. I'll run into people on the Rubicon and, oh, I broke. Does anyone have a welder? And we're welding a stranger's rig back together. So this is just a do-all vehicle that I really enjoy, and it's different. Everyone knows that it's like Hummer Chris. He kind of become known as Hummer Chris. So it's kind of just the vehicle and myself we've become one. So that's the Hummer H3.